GRZ vehicles pass without paying. So use it for the road so that private sector can thrive on better infrastructure. That makes the business processes seamless. Do not, and I request, do not misuse public funds, because when you do, you rape the entire monetary system. Private sector, when you approach a bank, other than wanting to know who you are and who your mother was, they also want to know where you spend the money and why before they can give you a loan. It's important that you stick to those protocols when you're going to borrow money, because the person or the institution that lends you money is likely to ensure that you stay in the straight and narrow. When you jump to cheaper options of borrowing, in the sense there are no conditions, it means that you are borrowing with an intention to abuse the resources that you have borrowed, which is very easy to do, by the way. The propensity to save in this country is very low. So borrowing has become a cardinal part of the entire business. So let's put rules around borrowing money, and let's have a wider participation from society as to when money should be borrowed, why it should be borrowed. Let's spend money going around the provinces and ask whether we should borrow more. Because ultimately, they've got a say, because one day they'll have to pay out of their tax income from their businesses to defend the position of government, because it becomes sovereign. That's why it's called sovereign. It's guilt-edged. Let's look inwards to private sector. Let's assess their capacity to lend to government in a more formalized and longer term. Is it possible, for instance, for institutional investors to participate in these longer dated instruments, such as the nice ones that our colleagues were getting at 9.5 and so forth and so on, and which are due to be repaid? Maybe at the time when it's due, there'll be a bit of arm twisting and it can be delayed a bit further. If you're going to borrow from your relative, because at a certain stage they might forgive you because the same blood flows through. From an outsider, they might take it all away from you. So colleagues, a lot can be said about all this. I got the inkling that government has put in a few things. They've got so many acts. They've got
a minute to go.
Sorry?
1 minute.
Yes, I'm actually winding down. I knew you'd come for me. They have a framework to manage debt, but they do not have the platform to implement that framework. They'll say all the good things that they have about managing debt. Reading through the acts, it would appear that sometimes they borrow outside the provisions of the act. I don't know if there's anyone from ZIPA. I want to ZIPA to help the private sector understand what the true total exposure, domestic and external, that the Zambian public owe to somebody. We want to understand the hidden incidence of the debt, because the debt currently stands, I don't know. And if one gets that 100 kwacha from that man, he will have just bribed you for something else. Because if the constitutional provisions are such that you're going to set up so many provisions, handouts to people and so forth and so on, I want someone to calculate what that means in today's money, what that will cost. I want to know what the cost of the reform process in the retirement benefits. I want to know what that means. I want to know what debt has been contracted about 3 weeks ago, so that we have a moving target, and every so often we can review it and know exactly what it means. Because in private sector, the bank knows if they find you drinking a whiskey instead of beer, they remind you that you owe them money. That is how you manage debt. A little boy in my village always refused to bath. And the parents would catch them and make them bath. And soon after they had bathed, the little boy would run and roll itself in the dust and say, "But I told you I didn't want to bath."
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very calculated. I thought you were going to do a bigger critique, but very, very modest, isn't it? Yeah, corruption. Yes. Yeah. Okay, big hand again, please, for Muna. Thank you. Thank you very much, Muna. Well spoken. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, good. So we have got another discussion from the civil society perspective. This is none other but, is it Mrs. or Miss Faith? She's Mrs., right? So I think I've got her brief CV here. Faith is currently the program manager for JCTR.
More than the 10 minutes because everybody else has had more.
I thought you were not taking on the time. We'll give you 12 minutes.
Okay, I had prepared for 10, so let me try to be within the time. The credentials around the table are overwhelming, I think. Dr. Mr. Muna, I think the backgrounds are very strong in issues to do with economics, debt, and the like. But I think I would like to say I've inherited a history from the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection, a history that comes from looking at the structural adjustment programs when we began our basic needs basket, a history that looks at the Jubilee campaign and how JCTR fought alongside DAZ and other organizations in civil society to ask for debt relief. And a history of, after that, monitoring how this debt has been used, and also trying to ensure that even as we move away from gaining or amassing more debt, we are keeping our budgets in check and using the monies that we have set aside for spending towards social sectors just in that manner. So I think there are three highlights to what I want to speak about. The concern coming from our side is threefold, generally. Government. I think that there's been a lot of talk about government and how we have borrowed in the past. 2015 came, we had a new tax regime. By February, we had already started going back on our word. Soon after that, we wanted to raise our threshold in Parliament. JCTR asked government and Parliament not to raise this threshold because it would take us back to the HIPC days. But what did we see? Parliament rose the threshold. Soon after that, we are seeing electricity shortages and a major electricity crisis. Government goes back to the Eurobond market and borrows 1.25 billion. And this 1.25, we celebrated actually that we have gotten it. I remember the newspaper headlines that day. We have gotten the money, the Eurobond, we have gotten it. What was it spent for? What was it meant for? To plug up holes in our budget. Those holes, a large percent of it being staff salaries for civil servants. Where is the investment there? When we look at government over the past few years, I think it has already been noted by other presenters, by Dr. Khaled, there's a lot of wastage in how we are spending our resources. I refer to the Auditor General's report released last November. Looking at the Auditor General's report, we saw irregular payments rising by 114%. This is from 14 million kwacha to 115 million kwacha. We saw undelivered material. We know we've been constructing and constructing and constructing. Undelivered material, 250% increase. From 19 million, we're going to 251 million. Unvouched for expenditure, money that doesn't have proper backing, from 67% to 349%, 348, from 67% to 349 million kwacha, rising by over 300%. So we're saying we have been in a situation where unvouched for expenditure has been lower, undelivered materials has been lower, but we are progressively increasing wastage in our society, wastage in the way we use the little money that we have. And this is an analysis from 2013 to 2015. If we look at expenditure, we believe that this has been excessive from the civil society point of view. Just recently, I think the former speaker talked about the ICC. Where are our priorities? Do we want to ensure that we run Zambia totally under the ground? Or do we want to see Zambia be able to pay for free education for primary schools and have quality education in these schools? We have created new districts. We still have a very large foreign, in terms of expenditure, foreign trips with large entourages. And also we look at the new ministries. What is the necessity of a religious? We are coming from civil society, faith-based organization. We have church mother bodies. We have the registrar of societies. What is the role of the new ministry in line with this? And we're looking at an appointed cabinet member, tax-free salary. Where are our priorities? I also want to look at where the money comes from. In terms of looking at the loans, I think it was very clear to see that the first loan that we got was about 5% in terms of interest. We moved closer, 2014, 2015, we're now seeing 8%, 9%. And I think I remember some discussions before the government in Torridge went to get this loan to say we're actually aiming for, there was some rumor about the 2 billion, but we came back with the 1.25. I think at that point we should have said we are not able to actually even attract the amount of money that we want. People do not trust us enough. And we should have at that point started looking at how to curb our excess expenditure. Just, I think 2 days ago, ZIPA released a report talking more or less about an economic recovery program and the IMF, which has been in media circles of late. And I noticed something from this report. It was doing an analysis of 2015, and we saw that FRA in that year spent 90% in excess of what was budgeted. One of the pillars of the economic recovery program is budget integrity. This budget integrity has not been held. Even the IMF's recent tour to Zambia highlighted this. We are already spending so much more than we can actually raise. And what will happen in the future? We've already seen it. It's not to fly in the future. Tax thresholds have already risen. Yes, there was a leeway pay as you earn minimum, I think from 3,000 to 3,300, but the top band, 6,200 should be, raised from 25% to 27.5%. So already people's incomes are being taxed more and more. And how many people earn more than this 6,200? It's the middle class, isn't it? So who's paying? We have to pay. I think we have to look also on certain statistics. I think the IMF monitor, fiscal monitor, gives annual average of debt to GDP ratio from 2007 to 2014 at about 23%. But is projecting that this threshold will increase, this annual average will increase from 2015 to 2021, they're saying to be about 58.6. Now we saw there the CPIA thresholds, that sustainability, that amount of debt succeeds even the highest band, the most trustworthy debtors. And Zambia is slowly sinking towards the least trustworthy. So a crisis, I would also like to believe that we are in one. And the key solution for us is for governments to look inward, not too much towards the debtors, not too much towards yes, it can look to the private sector, but it also has to look very much inwards to stop the bleeding, as Action Aid says, to stop the money being lost, and to also look at how to be able to raise revenue in a much better way. Because even with ZRA, just looking at the 2015 audit, we lost over 2 billion kwacha, uncollected revenue. So we have to look inward, we have to strengthen our systems for us to be able to move from this debt situation without depending so much more on other debt.
Round of applause, please. Thank you very much. To the point. Okay, we've got a couple of minutes to sort of ask a few questions, comments, reactions. Okay, quick questions, comments, reactions. And I think from my point of view, we all seem to be very used to debt. Yeah, all of us in this room. I'll give you an example. Say you've got about 5,000 and your wife has actually left the car on E. What do? You have to pay a chick who you like very much for the guys. And she says, look, I've got something that I need to buy now. I need 1,000 kwacha from you. What do you do, guys? What do? You give her everything. Have to go on and the end result is you have nothing by the time you reach your office. Which 5,000 kwacha would have gone? Okay, questions, comments, please. Yes? Sir.
Great discussion. My name is Clive Murumba. I'm speaking as a private citizen. First of all, I think this is a great presentation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly. Let me start by saying I think you guys sitting on top there are very brave because you've stated things which are very negative in a very diplomatic manner. I think you've stated facts, and I think that is something that is appreciated. One thing I just want to highlight is what was mentioned by Dr. Fundaka and Mr. Antua, which is the disconnect really between our monetary policy and the fiscal side. What I mean, and I'd like to get your views on this is, so you have the central bank doing certain things to try to say target inflation, etc. But then on the other hand, you have these uncoordinated sort of decisions which seem to be coming from our colleagues in other branches of government. So perhaps you would just like to speak to that, because I think that's a fundamental issue. You may try with monetary policy, but as long as you don't have a hold on the fiscal side, you can't control your expenditure. There seems to be no strategy to your spending plan. You seem to be buying things that are overpriced. To me, it seems like you are not going to win that battle at all. So maybe just to get your views on that. Thank you.
Okay, the disconnect, your organization.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Krishnan Jagdishwaran, or KJ in short. I am the Managing Director for Specialized Systems and also the Chairman for the Kaizen Club of Zambia. So in fact, I just need a bit of more time because you took away some of my time as well. I just want to comment on this program particularly because we started sharp at 1814. If only we had a minister or a politician invited, I mean globally, we would have just started the program. So this shows the difference between government and governance. And we are talking of $4 billion of debt. So where did this money go? Unfortunately, or rather fortunately, I am not an economist. I talk common sense. And where did this money go? Whether it is due to, wrong allocation of funds, whether due to government reasons, political reasons, or due to bad governance. If it is due to bad governance, I am sure the speakers on the stage would have spoken more about how the money was spent, but none of them spoke about how the money was spent. We were more involved in discussing how to manage the situation or how bad the situation is going to be in the future. Okay, which means that it is more of government than governance. For me, I would like to alienate two things. One is this debt situation, the other one is the long-term sustainability of the country. The debt situation is a mess. In management parlance, you cannot find solution to a mess. You can only manage a mess. Long-term sustainability is completely different. You borrow from IMF, at least we learn lessons from these bad examples of wrong allocation. And you look towards the development of the nation, not the growth per se. Most of the times, I don't know how economists view growth and development. Both are completely different. A nation can develop but not grow. And it can grow but not develop. Some of the examples of a nation which can grow but not develop is in the Middle East. Too much of oil, they keep growing. But if you take out all the expatriates in the Middle East, do you think that country can still grow? It cannot. So what are we trying to achieve by the long-term sustainability? Is to develop Zambia. Let us build more engineering colleges, more medical colleges. Use these funds more appropriately to develop this country, to develop Zambians so that we can handle the whole country by ourselves and thereby sustain in a longer term. All of you may not be alive to enjoy the fruits of that benefit. But can we sacrifice, can one generation sacrifice so that your children and grandchildren can live in a developed country? So for me, this is a mess actually. I am the chairman of the Kaizen Club of Zambia. We preach the industry how to reduce wastage, as explained by Mrs. Faith. We talk about reducing wastage. Each and everything that the citizen is not going to benefit is a waste. There was a time, I handled so many sectors in my company. There was a time when we used to joke, if I have to meet a minister or a PS, not minister, I mean a PS or a director, we joke actually that we have to see them either in Joburg Airport or Dubai Airport, not necessarily in their offices. And this thing has to change. Each and every kwacha that is spent on expenditure should be questioned. If we can reduce wastage, I am sure this 400 million per year can be allocated comfortably. So you can manage the situation. It's not so bleak, but there should be willpower, there should be a direction. One generation must sacrifice. My humble submission.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Please go ahead. So let's disconnect issues, the mess, how do we get out of it? to be addressed, and then yourself. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Geoffrey Ngana from Human Limited, coming from private sector. Dr. Ndanga and the association, do we see a shift or a change in the Bank of Zambia Act in the near future? I'll spend a little bit more on why I'm asking that. I'm a director and owns the company here. I have 18 employees. My employees can get loans on vehicles, and even things. I pay their salaries. But it's very difficult for me to borrow because the Bank of Zambia Act says commercial banks ask 3 times more than what you want to borrow on. I think this is letting us down. If I want to buy a house, it's pegged at 800,000 kwacha or 1.2. The bank is going to ask me to provide collateral security over 5 million kwacha. I think it's a letdown. China, an individual, a company can borrow money to finance our roads, and they'll pay 1%, which Zambia can default on paying back 1%. Can we see, or do we see anything close to changing that Bank of Zambia Act? As an association, I feel it's time, it's letting Zambians down. It's not everyone who's a criminal, it's not everyone who's a crook, and it's justifiable to keep thinking like that in Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, shall we start with the former government?
Let me say, when we discuss issues related to our economies, there's nothing about bribery. I think what we are looking for are facts. One thing is this discussion. I know that part of the problem is also not to look at statements about what has happened. You've seen that in my presentation, I tried to put in a lot of numbers and figures to avoid generalizations. And I think that should be a point in our discussion. But discussing the effect of our economies or whatever should not be seen as an act of bribery. This is where we miss it, because we are sometimes we are afraid of discussing the truth. What is great about saying that our economy is not doing well? Is that not the truth? I know, okay, in my position where I work now, I work in 14 different countries in East Africa, and we talk. I'm based in Zimbabwe. We are invited to go and talk about how we can create fiscal space. We had such a big conference, multiples of what we are here, and we were asked to do the lead paper. And we had to talk about what, in our view, must be done to put things right in the Zimbabwe economy. And it was not about bribery, but about giving proper advice, because that's what we are paid for. Right. Now, the question of fiscal side and the monetary side, I know that there is always this thing like the central bank is independent, whatever. I think I've always argued that